part 11. So if you didn't realize at this point, I've been sort of tricking you into learning how to play jazz a little bit. And so we're going to finally get into jazz blues, okay? But I did it in a way so that the only thing we're going to use in the jazz blues are the three things that we worked on up to this point, right? So what did we work on up to this point? We worked on like those bunch of different kinds of blues motifs. Like the B.B. King, patterns that I showed you. And those different kinds of things. But also remember, we learned arpeggios, right? We learned that we approach them by a chromatic approach note. And then we learned them as pivot arpeggios. And that's what we're going to put to good use today. Now, let's just, before we get into all that, let's just look at the jazz blues progression. Okay, I'll put it up there. Okay, so now it's almost the same thing to a certain point. It's 12 bars, just like a normal blues is. Now, what's the difference here? Difference is that in the fourth bar, you see a little 2-5 there, right? That's the 2-5 to the 4 chord. So that's like a 5 or 4 chord, a secondary dominant, because that's where we hear that tonic B-flat-7 chord start to function as a dominant chord, resolving to the proper place. So it's a turns functioning right there. So we put a 2-5 right there. Now, when we play a solo, we can ignore that 2. A lot of old school jazz players would say that we don't even think about that 2 chord. We treat that whole thing as just a 5 chord. Okay. So next, in bar 5, we get that 4 chord, and that goes to an E. In this case, we're in B flat blues, by the way. Next, we get the diminished chord right there, up a half step from the 4 chord. Also, you can play over this. You can play the chord tones in that chord if you want to, but like I said before, a lot of the old school jazz guitar players are sort of not going to think too much about that diminished chord and just keep treating the whole thing like that 4 chord, okay? Then it goes back to the 1 chord. And then it's going to do a 2-5 to the 2 chord, which would be C minor, right? So anyways, the first 7 bars, you can play the same thing that you play in the normal blues. You don't have to worry about like the 2 of that in that 2-5. You don't have to worry about the diminished chord. You can play. Matter of fact, you can actually, if you're really good at the blues, you can almost get away with not changing anything. You just got to be very careful and use your ears, okay? And so anyways, getting back to the 9th bar, you got a 2-5 for 2 bars that goes back to the 1 chord. And then you got what a lot of people call a 1-6-2-5, 1-6-2-5. But it's important. It's okay to call it that, and most people would, and probably I would too. But you have to understand that G7 chord is functioning as the 5 of the 2 chord, right? So it's like a 1-5 of 2, 2-5, but we can just call it a 1-6-2-5 if we want to, okay? But look, let me just demonstrate it here, like not thinking about anything, just playing like a blues using the same stuff we have to this point, okay? It does, right? But you can get away with this. But, if you're playing with a bunch of jazz guys, you're playing to a jazz crowd, they're going to start to realize that you don't know how to play jazz, okay? they might say, "Oh, that guy's a great blues player," and he almost can play a jazz blues, but it's not. You don't. It doesn't sound really like jazz so much. It just sounds like a nice, um, fancy kind of blues, right? And that's fine. And you really have to be able to do this, um, to play the blues, or even to play a jazz blues. So I would suggest that if you're like a jazz blues or you're a jazz musician, you should go back and learn like these blues motifs because they go a long way. And if you're in a, if you want to start aspiring to play jazz more, well, then you have to get more into the chord tone jazz sounding things. Okay. Anyway, so uh, now what I did is, like I said, I recorded 2 takes or a couple takes, and I took the best one, the one that demonstrated these things the best. So remember, we're in a B flat blues. So in a normal blues, we have 3 dominants, right? The 1, the 4, and the 5 chord, right? Now in the jazz blues, we get one more. So look, let's look at the dominant chords here. We get the 1 chord, right? 1 dominant chord, the 4 dominant chord, like any other blues. Then we get the 1 dominant chord again, and we can not think about that F minor chord. So it's a 1, a 4, and a 1 chord for 2 measures. Then we got the 4 chord for 2 measures. And that's fine to think of it that way too. You don't have to think about that diminished chord, right? So to this point, it's just a blues. And then in bar 7, we got the 1 chord again. It's normal, right? And then, but to that, now all of a sudden we're going to get that 2-5 that goes to the 2 chord. And that changes the whole thing up a little bit. And so now remember, thinking about those 4 arpeggios, I said it's good if you can play 1 for every chord tone in the chord, right? So that means for B, for example, we got these 4, right? B flat 7, D minor 7, flat 5, F minor 7, A flat major 7, right? And then when we go to the 4 chord, we got the E flat 7, the G minor 7, flat 5, B flat minor 7, and D flat major 7, right? So those are our choices. Now for the G7, all of a sudden G is a 5 chord in C major. So all of a sudden we're going to switch to C major here, right? And we have those 4 chords for C major now: G7, B minor 7, flat 5, D minor 7, and F major 7, right? And then for that, remember the 2-5-1 in measures 9 and 10, we can think of that whole thing as F7. So it's F7, A minor 7, flat 5, C minor 7, and E flat major 7, right? So these are the choices that we have. Now for that 1-6-2-5 all the way at the end there, you can do this, but you don't really have to. So if you want to try to, play these different arpeggios over that, you have a lot of choices, right? So anyways, the first solo that I played, I'm going to show you what I did, okay, and the way I thought it through. So the first thing I did is I played that motif that we learned in Upping Your Blues Game Part 1. Now we have the 4 chord that comes, it's a quick change right away. So I'm going to go. And I'm going to continue on just the way I did in that original lesson. This is where I would have ended if it was like kind of a normal kind of blues, but instead I started using pivot arpeggios here. That's B flat 7. That's sorry. This one is D minor 7, flat 5. B flat 7. So what do we have? So you can see that those pivot arpeggios all of a sudden give it a jazz kind of sound, right? And that takes me nicely to, well, what's that? That's, now we're on the 4 chord. That's the 3rd. That's the flat 7. Now for the second measure, what would that be? Bar 6. I just play some pivot arpeggios. So this is G minor 7 flat 5, and then B flat minor 7. Okay, so those first few measures are going to go like this. Now we get one measure of B flat 7 again. I keep going with the B flat 7, minor 7 flat 5. And now we got that 2-5. So I want to play some notes that match that 2-5. So I just play this. Right? Passing tone. So what do we have? Now we have the 2-5 for the 2 bars, C minor 7 F7. So I'm going to do that arpeggio where I approach it by a chromatic approach note and play an E flat major 7 arpeggio, right? So nice bright sound. And then from this point I'm going to play A minor 7 flat 5, and then F7. No, yeah, F7. Pivot arpeggio. Now here I tried to be fancy because we know it's a lesson, so I wanted to show you like something that's kind of difficult, but you can do for that 1-6-2-5. Right? It's a lot of chords in just 2 measures. So I go up the D minor 7 flat 5 arpeggio. Then I play for the now we're going to go to the G7, right? So I'm going to play B minor 7 flat 5. And then what happens there? We have C minor, so I'm going to play C minor 7. And then for the F7, I'm going to play E flat major 7. Okay, so let's just check out that whole thing. And then the next measure is going to be the top again, right? So then I'm going to go, I go back to just that B.B. King type of thing, right? Now for the E flat chord, I go up a G minor 7 flat 5 and down. And then I play a D flat major 7 arpeggio. D flat minor 7. Right? And then I go back to like our original motif. Then we get the 2-5 coming up, right? F major 7 arpeggio. We got the 2-5 C minor 7 F7. So here, remember, I'm just thinking F7. So I play E flat major 7, F7, A minor 7 flat 5, C minor 7, and then which is that 1 6 2 5, right? B flat. I just play the G7, this is the third, and then for the C minor 7 chord, I'm playing the, and then I just go thirds and sevenths like we did in that other Upping the Blues. Okay, so let's do the second half here. I don't really know exactly what I did. Okay, so that's how I sort of constructed this guitar solo using the tricks that we did up to this point. So for this lesson, I only talked about the three things that we did to this point, right? The blues motifs, like the old school blues motifs, and then the jazz arpeggios, right? I didn't talk about the chromatic aspect at all. And chromaticism is really important for jazz. So if you want to get into that, I suggest you go to the Barry Harris Chromatic Scale Workout Series, all right? And I figured that I would actually, like, maybe the next part of that series would be about how to putting all that stuff to use in a jazz blues. I'll use the same key in the same track. So that's going to take a little while to get together, but you know, in that one we learn more of the chromatic language, you know. All right, so you know, if that interests you, check that out. Okay. Now, for homework, I suggest that you try to come up with your own lines using the three things that we worked on up to this point: blues motifs, arpeggios, approached by chromatic approach notes, and then the pivot arpeggios. Remember, there's 4 for every dominant chord, and you can ignore the minor chords, okay, and also that diminished 7 chord. All right, so that's what you want to work on. You know, it's not really smart to just learn this one solo that I just played, even though it's okay. But you want to develop your own language and, you know, using these ideas and come up with your own licks. That way, it'll come very natural when you're playing out. Okay, you don't have to think about it so much. All right. So, anyway, this is sort of a heavier lesson, so it might take a little bit of time for you to get it under your fingers and work stuff out. But, you know, if you want me to critique you, just send it to me. Send me the video of you putting together your own blues. The track is available for download. The PDF is available for download, and you can get that stuff so that you can. It makes it a little bit easier for you to study. Okay. Remember, that's all on Patreon. Patreon is like $5 or $10 a month, whichever you choose. There's some, you know, you get some extra benefits for the $10 thing, but you know, whatever you want to do is fine. It helps me pay for these lessons, and for the time it takes to do these lessons. And also, one of my goals is to make these lessons accessible to people all over the world. So, you're helping me by becoming a member. So if you have the inclination to do that, I really appreciate it. All right, so I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.